Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. This is our fourth meeting for our fourth SASIG meeting this year. Before we start our usual proceedings, given the exceptional circumstances that we find ourselves in the UK and some countries in the Commonwealth, we would like to pay our respect to Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II. And so June will say a couple of words, and then we will hold 1 minute of silence, and then we will continue as usual. So June, over to you.
At this time, we remember Queen Elizabeth II, who I remember coming to the throne, a working mother, balancing so beautifully her role as grandmother and mother, and her huge role in the culture of the UK and of the world. We honor her constancy, and we honor her deep sense of the spiritual, which empowered her life. May she rest in peace, and may those who are grieving around her find help and support with their tears.
All right, thank you, everyone. So now we can start with our ordinary, usual proceedings. Tonight, we are delighted to present two light painting photographers, artists, Patrick Rochon and Aaron Culmer. I'm going to introduce them by reading their artist statement. And when you hear them, you'll understand why I have invited them to join our initiative. So Patrick declares, "The art that comes through me is higher than I could ever be." In 2011, Canadian artist Rochon publicly declared light painting as a form of art in its own right. Rochon announced 15 years earlier that he was dedicating himself to this art form full-time. The Merlin-esque results of combining his photography with elements from painting, dance, sculpture, and media arts is a remarkable marriage of humanity and technology, lifting the trace of the artist to new heights and opening new horizons for a new school of artistic expression at the highest level of fine art. But, Aaron, on the other hand, says, "In my art, I like to capture the beauty of light through long exposure photography, referred to as light painting. Just like in canvas painting, I use multiple brushes and light sources to add color and light to my subject inside the photograph. This contemporary medium combines the technical aspect of photography with the free-flowing nature of painting in the open space. I often transcend into a higher state of consciousness during my work, as if a higher creative source is guiding my hand. This flow state is a form of meditation that it is not only highly creative, but also extremely therapeutic. My goal as an artist is to inspire those who see my work to look more carefully at the world around them, to discover the ethereal realm that keeps us all connected. If a viewer stops for just a moment to reflect on an image I have painted, then I feel I have succeeded in my work. So without further ado, I'm going to give the word over to Patrick.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was a beautiful silence before. Thank you for that moment we shared together. It really poured in. Now we're going into another realm. What I'll do today is transfer to you part of my experience, my process, and hopefully inspire certain parts of your path, of your process. Been working this year. It's a very special year for me. It's been now this year. It's officially 30 years that I started light painting, and it's a turning point. It's an important turning point in my process. It started with photography here in Montreal, and at the end of my college courses, I heard about light painting. It was very unused, uncultivated. There were a few people used it through history, but nothing major. The first times I started painting with light, that means doing a long exposure photograph in the dark with a camera that takes a long picture as long as you want in complete darkness, and moving light either in freely in space or on subjects, people or objects. I started to see a world that I couldn't take a picture of, yet I took a picture of it. It was like seeing something invisible. And that got me very curious. That hooked me. And from that day on, I started putting more time and energy into light painting until the day I decided to become a light painter, which was a term that didn't truly exist. It wasn't cultivated yet. And that switch allowed me to deprogram photography that I've learned in college and start opening up to new ways of thinking, using photography as a support, but not as the main creative tool. What became the main creative tool was the flashlight, the pen light, any kind of lights that you can move around with your hands, and that became that was, you know, that became the main tool to how to feel and without seeing the result. So light painting in the dark with tools, but you don't see the result because there's no trace of light we can record with our eyes, or barely. And then waiting a certain time to see the result. Back then was film, so I had to wait 3 days or 4 days or 5 days to see what I've created. That school was harsh in many ways. It was hard because always in the uncomfortable zone of creation, always vulnerable, always.
Patrick, we've lost the audio.
You good?
Yes.
Are we good?
Yes, you're back.
Okay, perfect. I don't know what happened. It just went muted. So that first 15 years working with film was a very, very hard school. And it always got me afraid of light painting because there was nobody else truly doing that before me that I could follow and learn from. And also because I didn't know what I was doing. So I did a lot of portraits, worked a lot with people. And I think that was one of the best school I ever went to because it taught me to feel. It taught me to become more intuitive, to utilize my right brain. I didn't know it back then, but slowly intuition became more and more present until now, after 30 years, I feel so in tuned with my intuition. It's scary precise. It is so precise. It gives me exactly the information that I need at exactly the time I need it. And now I switch completely to just follow my intuition, even if it doesn't make sense, even if I don't know where I'm going. I just receive the information often through meditation or just through doing things during the day, and then I apply it right away. So the fear got eliminated from the process, and I became completely a servant of my own intuition. And it's leading me towards adventures. I have no idea how all of this is going to happen, what exactly is going to happen, and what's going to happen next. I have some clues, but I don't know exactly. So it's fun because it's a surrender, it's a letting go, and it's especially allowing. And allowing is one of the secret formulas of my artwork.
Mm.
It's like slowly I eliminated the controlling aspect of myself, which still exists, but it knows when to step aside and to just allow things to happen. And by this letting go and allowing, that's when I get the greatest magic in my pictures. Things I can't explain, pictures I couldn't predict, and things that I look at and go like, wow, this is so amazing. And I have no connection that I'm the creator of these things. So the me part is like aside, and I just let it flow, let it happen. And I go into chaos, I go into dance, and I go into movement, and I just let it be. And that's when I get the best results. So briefly, light painting has been my school, my teaching, and it's been a huge transformative process I didn't expect as a young person when I started. And it's been, I still feel like I'm halfway through after 30 years of light painting. So my role as a light painter was to cultivate, and to open doors and to reinvent myself over time, and to keep enriching one of the art I find, one of the medium I find the most extraordinary, that is very connected to today, mixing technology and old knowledge at the same time. Because everything that I'm learning through this has already been lived and learned through other artists, other philosophers, other thinkers. Even certain martial artists have reached this state of understanding. So through those years, so many revelations happen. Um, and the one from the last 5 years is creation is the answer to everything. I think what sparked that process was the funny movie some of you might have seen, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where in the movie they're asking what's the ultimate question, and then they're looking for the ultimate answer to end up with, after thousands of years of waiting for a supercomputer to process the whole universe, the answer was 42. And the creator, when he did that, he just put 42, and he admitted it years later. He's just like, okay, let's make it like that. But somehow it triggered my mind of like, okay, if what is the answer to everything is the ultimate question, then what is the answer? And 15 years later, it just came to me. It just like, okay, creation is the answer to everything. So we're basically creators creating. That's the human race. We're created somehow, regardless of any belief or cultures or spirituality you have, we're a creation. And we are creators creating. So we're just receiving the gift that made us, and we're practicing it in so many ways. And all of you are creators. Even if you decide to do nothing with your life, that is a form of creation. Even if you decide to destroy as much as possible in your life, that is also a form of creation. So creation doesn't have an opposite. It englobes everything. It shows you the power of nature, the power of the stars, the heavens beyond, and it englobes everything. So and the greatest answer I could find to the ultimate question of what is the answer to everything, the answer to everything is creation. We're here as human beings on the planet. We're creating incredible things. We're not fully connected with nature. We're still out of balance and out of tune, and we have negative consequences to what's going on this planet. But basically, we're also in a school learning through the experience, the human experience, and the human spirit. So that's one of the wonderful things that happens through intuition is you can ask questions and eventually you'll find the answer, even if it takes 15 years. I believe all the information is already available to us and we can tap into it somehow and answer a lot well, almost all the great questions we have. So in my journey, I had to travel. I ended up in many countries living there. I didn't have financial support, so I had to be very creative to survive. And light painting was always there on the side with me. Through 15 years of traveling, there was a huge transformation. I spent 10 years also in Japan, in Tokyo, which was probably the biggest transformation I had was spending time in Japan. And when I came back to Montreal, I decided to become a professional light painter. Until then, I was just exploring and playing. So I created a base here and I started doing active work. For my first intention was to make light painting known by many. So I made the intention, having no idea how to make this happen. And somehow the stars aligned and the right people connected with me. And we started doing big projects with big companies that spread out through the internet, light painting like never before. So I knew that was going to last for a short time, having observed the internet for a while. And for 3, 4, 5 years, there was a wave of light painting created worldwide through collaboration with companies. It formed me professionally. It made me understand money, budgets, productions, etc., etc., etc. And that was that. Just pre-COVID, I had a feeling, intuition again, to leave my agent. I had a wonderful agent, a woman in Toronto, who did a great job. I learned a lot from her. I left the agent. I closed all social media, and I just disappeared. I didn't tell anybody. I just disappeared from everything, not knowing what was going to happen. So at that time, I finished a project that I'll show you. I'll share my screen so you have a bit of visuals, less words, more seeing. And voila, share a screen. And it's this one. So I took 4 years while I was doing commercial work. I was also starting to deprogram my that school of all the commercial work, and I created this website called Light of Rochon, and it's a website that I did secretly for 4 years, training like the Karate Kid, by doing a line of light. Like I used to do incredible, colorful, and crazy. And then I was like, okay, let's start with the white line. And every morning around between 3:30 and 5:30, I would wake up naturally. The school just called, and I would go in my studio right behind this wall. And I was like, okay, I'm at school. I'm the student. And these incredible things happen. Every day I've learned something. Every day there was a message coming in, there was a teaching coming in, because I made the intention to deprogram and I was 25 years of light painting. It's like, okay, I don't know light painting. Let's start from scratch. So doing lines, white lines, white lines, right hand, left hand, open, close. And I just, one picture, one line, one picture, one line. And every morning I would do that. And slowly, when a message would come, I would integrate that. And slowly the line opened up and this little magic started happening, and it got richer and more beautiful and more special. And it opened up to new worlds that I never seen before. At the end of the 4 years, this meditation, this message came, and this message is basically everything that I've learned and that I've become over the last 30 years. It was over the last, it was close to 30 years back then, because I just launched it on the 01/01/2021. So I called it the Great Awakening. It's my art manifesto, and it sums up everything that I've learned about life and everything that I've learned about light painting. So this is on the first page. There's a video, a 5-minute video that you can see at the top, and you'll see my whole process. I was like, okay, let's be transparent and just show people exactly how I've done that work in the last 4 years. So the line became explosions of incredible lights. All of this is just one photograph. It's not digitally manipulated or changed. I just tweak at the end to make sure it's balanced in its colors. And basically, all of these abstract or came out of that series of going back to a new school. If you take the time, maybe you see this and say, oh yeah, okay, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of light and a lot of textures. But if you fine tune if you take the time to tune in with your right brain, you can start seeing maybe a story, maybe a face, maybe a dragon, maybe a creature, maybe like this is called the wall of knowledge. I gave all the pieces a name, a title, and you can start seeing dark things, beautiful things, scary things, and you can see things I haven't seen with each piece. So like I see 3 characters, kind of like 3 guides, kind of being very strong and very present around. The enchanting void, just a few pieces, necessary transformation. So it's basically like a peak of what I've reached in my exploration. The peaceful flame, etc. There are many. This is the secret of the golden fire, and after the stories of the unseen, they can all be opened up and viewed. Spirited machines. It's kind of like I'm very futuristic. I'm often in the future. I'm interested naturally. My attraction is towards what we can't see with the eye. So life after death, spirit, energy, emotions, love, anything that we can't see. All these realms I've been exploring in many different ways for a very long time, and that's the realm I'm the most interested in. The not the human realm, but the realm of the unseen and the energy. So it's a wide range. It doesn't try to be anything that was pre-existing in our cultures. It really comes from an authentic process and an authentic filter, which is me, filtering this great energy and creating. But none of it, and that was very important in my process, none of it was coming from the intellectual. Like very quickly, I started moving away from control and intellectual, and I made less and less intentions. I learned to let go. So all my work has to be super spontaneous, and it has to be bursts of energy, slow or fast or long or short. But I asked my intellectual not to get involved anymore. It took a while to get there, but it's completely non-intellectual. And if you look at the work, and that's one thing I really, really love at the work, is you see the work. You don't necessarily see an artist doing that work. The artist is gone. And in a lot of work, And in my earlier work, you can really see that there's a human being trying to do something behind. And then slowly that human being disappeared. And the work is existing by itself, like creatorless. And that's when I understood I was onto the right path with that whole website, that whole series, that whole school I started for myself. And I was like, okay, that's fine art. I finally reached a place where I can say that's fine art. It's egoless, it's humanless, it's just a flow that I cannot explain more than this. So another one's called Traces of Dreams, which is very ethereal. The mind of the harp player, king of wind blowing. There's all sorts of very ethereal pieces. This one's kind of funny. The opera singer. You can start seeing the characters appearing. The Rainbow Tribe was also a very cool series. And I didn't choose any of the names, and I just like painted that's at my own school, and I just learned and I allow it to happen. So all the words and all titles and all came afterwards. This is another beautiful piece. The Giving Breath. There's one called Dark Light. Of course, I've explored a lot darkness, which is so important on the path. To reach a form of empowerment, from what I understood in my process, is we have to transcend duality. Duality is it's a human cultivation. And even though we can see duality, if we really see deeper and if we really learn, science helps us with that, but certain people can see it, certain people in meditation can feel it. There's a complexity that makes oneness. So if we want to reach a form of empowerment or enlightenment, we must do this with light and darkness to make it into one force. We're the one kind of filtering if we're going to be dark or if we're going to be light and all these emotions. But I believe the architecture from my experience behind everything is not just, oh, here's a channel of dark, here's a channel of light, which channel we're going to connect to. Although there can be horrible things in life and in the world, and we understand that, behind it, there's oneness, what creates all of this. So for me, it was important to transcend duality, and I had to explore a lot of darkness, outside darkness and inside darkness, my own, of course. And that was a big, important, and intense process to fully go into it, but necessary. Here I talk about a bit about the line. Some lines are just, this is one stroke of light. And that's what I mean when, I see a bit of magic into it. All these beautiful details and all these highlights and these gradations that I find, so pleasant to the eyes. All of these have been done in one stroke. And the first white line became more and more worlds where I could start seeing things in there and feeling energy and really enjoying, all the surprises that came through. Complexity started happening, and richer pieces started happening. Like here, there's like a little bird here, a colorful bird. It's called Glide, which I love. So that was, and when I launched it to the public, it was fantastic, because I used to be on blogs everywhere. I used to be in social media. I used to, with all the commercial stuff. And then I left all of this, I launched it, and then almost nobody saw it. So that was also a lesson. If you're going to step away from every social media in the world, people are going to forget you quite fast, and your reach is going to, diminish. Which is fine, because it's part of dying and rebirth. And I'm getting really close to that rebirth now. And all of these pieces that I've been working on will make sense and will have a place. It's all part of that process. And that's how I reinvent myself. And that's what I lived many times, forms of death and rebirth. And I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to these form of death, and let it go of everything and just jumping into the void and starting anew. And it's getting more fun and pleasant. And also what's coming up now, because in the last year I've been working a lot on a new project, it's starting to make so much sense. It is so brilliant. It is so powerful. It is so necessary. It is so the next level of my path after 30 years. And all these pieces that were not involved in light painting are coming together in a big way. And I'm like, oh, never could I have seen that or imagined that if I would have just kept going. It's because I stopped, I let go, I just, okay, let's go somewhere, or let's start something new. Let's just go on this adventure, this creative adventure that I'm getting to this place. So it's really trusting what comes in. It's having a lot of faith. You have to have so much faith to jump into the void. And there's no security. And financially, it's been so hard. Like, it's been so hard. But it keeps coming in every day. And I know what I have to do today. And I know what I have to do today. And tomorrow, it's the same thing. And it just makes it makes perfect sense. So I've been working my faith in the last few years like never before. And I have been trusting my inner voice, my instinct, my intuition. So that's the school of light painting. And that's the school that taught me so much. And I've tried to share it with people as much as possible in so many ways, but it's hard because I also have to learn how to share these discoveries, and some are quite incredible. So how do you share what you receive so people can actually get the experience and reproduce it for themselves, not just say, hey, I know this, I know this, I know this, I know that, but how do you transmit that experience? And it is an experience. And I think Aaron is on it. It's just like, okay, get to the light painting or any form of creative art or any ways. And some people are, I've met people who are doing organic farming, and they're so aligned and they're so intuitive and they're so connected to the earth. So, and they're reaching higher form of consciousness through organic farming. So anything you do can become your school. You don't have to light paint. It's just one way. It's a very cool way. I love it because you don't see the results, so you're not in your intellect. When you paint, you see, and you can get the intellect involved in making decisions, bring in fear. At light painting, you have to go and you have to do it and you have to make it happen, and you think you're done and you move on, you try another one. And if you try to do this with the light too long, it becomes really bright and overexposed and nothing happens. So you just have to jump in and you have to move. So it's a very energetic, it is energy art in a way. So this is the other website that contain the clients, the press, everything that happened in the blogs, the Light Blades store, which tools I've created, and advertising virals, and also a lot of creative projects that I did for my own. Like this series on top here is portals. It's a series about portals. They were huge. It was the whole wall in my studio, doing big, complex light painting. It was fun. And portraits, a lot of portraits. Work with Infinity in Dubai, advertising for people, all sorts of creative collaborations with all sorts of artists and hair salons and name it. We've done all kinds of stuff. But it's the abstract. This is one of the earlier abstract that really got to me. Let's like working with people is one challenge. Doing portraits, and it's very hard for light painting because you have to light them and light around them, and you have to make them look interesting. But when I started working with light blades or tools like this, it became so interesting because I had to all of a sudden, I was facing myself. It was a black background and me. So no more subject. So then I had to I really understood where my blockages in my body. First of all, I was shy. I was shy to move. I felt a little clumsy, and I was just, okay, okay, move like this, move like that. And then 2 years after, I was just my body got unshy. And then it was, okay, left hand. Oh, left hand. Oh, left hand doesn't know how to light paint. Okay, well, let's light paint with the left hand. And the left hand, I discovered, never lights paint like the right hand, but it does incredible surprises. It does things that I'm like, oh my God, how'd that happen? So now I love to light paint also with the left hand. So work on one side of the body, work on the other side of the body. This also stimulates the right brain, which is your intuition, your creativity. So, oh, okay, of course I got to work with the left hand. So having both processor going full speed, it's nice. It's really nice. I'm sorry that I was raised to just use one hand. I wish I was done both from an early age, honestly. Because now processing information, getting creative ideas, it's on the spot. You ask me a question, a problem, it's solved. It's just here, dang, 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 here, dang, 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 here, dang, dang, dang. It's like, okay, both processors are working as one thing. Wonderful. I like the upgrade. So a bunch of tools like this, doing abstracts and eventually calling it kata, coming from the Japanese, which means the way. So kata is not just for martial art. It can be for pottery or anything like that. It can be for, it's when you're in the zone, when you're in the flow, when you become the tool, when you're not like, okay, how does that work? I'm not good enough. And I'm not, when you're just beyond all of this and you're just like, oh, here I am. I'm cleaning the dishes. Oh, I'm so in the zone. I love cleaning the dishes. It makes me feel good. Oh, it's basically a form of kata. You're in the flow, you're in the zone. You become one with your tool or your garden or whatever you're doing, or massaging your partner, or giving a hug. When you become one, it's usually related to art, but it's basically that flow. So I call it the light painting kata, and got some very interesting results, and to a place where I started simplifying and trying to do things like this picture, which was done in just one line. So there are videos that you can see me do light painting katas on this website, and there's tons of materials for people who wants to go deeper in it. Not everything is online, but a big chunk is online, and yeah, there's plenty of stuff online. Kata and tools. Here you can see a few tools. So right now, working a lot with acrylic or plexiglass or acrylic, depending how I call it, and filters, and even things like this can make beautiful results. This can look like water in the water splash, and it can go into really funny places, a lot of fun, and also it can go to very deep and serious places within yourself. If you open that door, if you invite it in, it's a really a wonderful way to learn. Now, I don't know what time I started, and I know I've been talking a lot, and that's me. Basically, you see my feet in my studio during daytime. So I just wanted, because usually we don't see anything, it's always dark, but I wanted to put some light in so people can see a little bit the atmosphere. And here you see a lot of blades and counters to work on. And if you watch The Great Awakening, the first one on my new website, on the Light of Rochon, in the video, you'll see when I get out of bed, what time I come out of bed, my meditation. You'll see the process in 5 minutes of how I get to do my work. So how much time did I use?
I think you've talked for about half an hour, which is great. See?
Creation is the answer to everything. And I'm going to keep exploring that and trying to do something with that understanding that came to me 5 years ago, and took about 15 years to get to. What is the answer to everything? Creation. We are created, creators creating, and it's been wonderful to create this moment with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was probably more than I expected in terms of, it was almost like listening to a wise man or a religious person. You know, it was more than just the art. Can I ask you kindly to share both websites on the chat, because I found your old one, but I didn't find your new one. So that would be great for us to keep the websites. Aaron, it's a tough tough following after Patrick, but I know that you have almost identical things to say.
I do. I loved Patrick's everything about that. I've read his manifesto. This is why I'm so happy that he joined us today. For those of you who don't know me, I am Aaron Culmer. My artist name is Ethereal Light Art. I am coming to you from Portland, Oregon in the United States, and I've lived in the Pacific Northwest for my entire life. I have traveled. I feel very blessed to be in this part of the country. I have light painters and artists from all over the world messaging me saying, oh, you have beautiful waterfalls and forests, and you have so much nature to go out and paint in. And it's true. Ever since I was a little child, my parents were not religious. Going out into nature was my church. Spending time in the forest, sleeping out under stars, looking up at the constellations. I remember my loving dad would ask me and be like, Aaron, can you tell me a story of what you see in the sky? And I would, like centuries and thousands of years ago, would point out a deer and they're having a picnic with another friend over here. And I would make elaborate stories of things that weren't quite always there, but my imagination was running wild, and my parents encouraged this. We were also my family were not artists. In fact, I did not find art. I didn't know anything about it. It was not installed into me until later in my life. I was a scholastic athlete, and through sports and through athletics, I found my first flow state. And in a flow state, for me, that means where your hyper focus meets movement. And during sports, I could technically slow down time, where I could actually do things that were perceived possible, but I could actually break down a second into milliseconds and actually react and move inside of that interval, which would give me a distinct advantage. And I knew that if I did it in sports, in later years, I could use it in other things, such as light painting. Fast forward 12 years, I still wasn't really doing much creativity and much art, but I was invited to go to a festival called Burning Man. Burning Man is a beautiful art festival down in Nevada. And at the time, there was 30,000 people there. It's grown to about 80,000 now. But this is a collective force of beautiful humans coming together as a community. It is a decommodified place, so there is no enterprise at all. In fact, it's based on gifting and based on altruistic creative expression, and which I immediately fell in love with. It completely transformed my life. And during one of these initial years, I was dancing. I'm a very physical, person. I like to move. And so I was dancing with what's known as called a space whip. It's a fiber optic space whip. This actually turns on and changes colors, as you can see. And a beautiful gentleman came up to me with consent and said, hey, can I take your picture? I, of course, inclined his offer and got back to my own dancing. Well, 10 minutes later, he came back and showed me the back of the camera, and he said, this is you and this is your light arts. And I said, I don't understand. He said, this is light painting, and you are the artist and you are the model, and you were actually light painting with you dancing and moving this around your body and showing the human form. And I was immediately hooked. I understood the beauty between movement and light. It sparked a connection in me that I could actually create art myself, that I had it inside of me, that I think many people on this earth don't really understand and realize. And the spiritual aspect of just wrapping yourself in light is something significant. This isn't, this is a cloak. You are cocooning yourself in a safety net of warm light. And this image in particular, to keep on the chronological time frame, was recognized on an international scale. And I was actually invited to a Light Painting World Alliance meetup, where I got to go to Paris and I got to light paint under the iconic Eiffel Tower and in the catacombs under Paris. But most importantly, I got to meet some of the best light painters in the world, who I still deem as friends today. And so there's something special about wrapping yourself in light, and I call this the ethereal wrap. I do this often as a warm-up per se. It gets my body moving, it gets me wrapped in light, it gets me in the right spiritual context to further create more complex images. And so I came back from all of this, and now I'm a light painter. And what do? You know, light painting has infinite possibilities, which is why I love it, which is why I think most people do love it, because you don't get trapped in the confines of doing one particular type of light painting. There's so many different light painting tools. I remember actually, let's digress. So actually, coming back from Burning Man, I didn't even own a DSLR, which you don't have to have a high profile camera. I didn't own a tripod at the time. So I stuck a little point and shoot on some books. And at that time, this camera only allowed me to do 30 seconds, which is plenty of time to do a light painting. I tied a little tiny $1, £1 light to an end of a string, and I made a circle, and I knew the centrifugal force would make a nice 360-degree circle. And I opened up a portal, and I looked at the back of the camera, and my heart and my soul exploded, because since I was a child, I was always reaching for this ethereal realm. I was always trying to jump into the unknown and trying to paint what I've been looking at and what I've been seeing that other people can't see. And this gave me the opportunity to do that. Before light painting, I was always kind of jumping through this portal, but I was always being vaulted back like a vertical trampoline. I would hit it and I would just bounce back. And this, now I got to stay, and I got to create, and I got to explore, and I got to explore myself in the depths that I've never had a chance to before. And this is what light painting does. And, you know, light to me, you know, signifies security. You know, for eons, since the beginning of time, we have always praised the sun. It gives us abundance. It gives us life. It gives us hope. That we won't be attacked in the dark from predators. You know, on the contrary, the darkness does invoke a mysterious kind of unsecure feeling. Some people ask me, you know, how do you feel like? What do you feel like when you're creating in the pitch black? It takes time to adjust. It takes time to get used to. It is a bit daunting at first, but like everything in light versus dark, if I have a torch or a flashlight, I am essentially painting my way out of the dark. I'm essentially in a dark cavern, dungeon, whatever you want to call it, but I'm actually making my own torch, and I'm creating my own path the way out of it. And so for me, that was extremely satisfying and fulfilling in that way. And so I kept light painting. I kept trying new things. In the beginning, I would go around my house, and, you know, being a world traveler and a Burning Man participant, you get a lot of strange and amazing gifts from amazing people. And so, of course, my house is full of like beautiful statues and figurines that I would actually light paint. I didn't have a lot of models that wanted to come. No one really understands what light painting is when I try to explain it to them, but it's certainly like in my inner circle, people were like, I don't understand what you're doing, but if you want me to come over and dance with you in front of the camera, and we can all have fun and make light and move light and movement and integrate it together and make beautiful art, I'm all in. So we would have these small little parties. We would attach lights to wrists, and we would attach lights to hats and necklaces or whatever. And everyone would have their own little section, being carefully not to upstage anyone. But we would all have our own little bit of the piece, and then we would all share the photo at the end. And it was beautiful. It was a great way to commune. It was a great way to celebrate light. It was a great way to celebrate self-expression through this medium. And so my creative process, being in the dark, does come with some challenges, but you can overcome those. And my creative process stems from me doing sensory deprivation exercises. 2 or 3 times a year, I blindfold myself for 24 hours or longer, and I actually go through my day-to-day activities. I shower, I go to the grocery store, I try to go, there's a beautiful Powell's Books, it's world famous. I go and I buy groceries. I try to walk as far as possible. I do yoga in the park. I hear a lot of strange comments, and that's part of it. It's part of the humility that comes with this. It's a very humbling process. It's also a huge exercise in empathy. And so you are starting to feel empathetic for some of those people out there that are seeing impaired or any disability. You know, you can walk down the street and you see someone with a cane and you want to help them and you send them a smile, but that smile actually has a little bit more impact internally when you actually have put yourself in their shoes. And so as an artist, I think we're all empaths. And I think the more you can be in touch with your empathy and love for humanity and other living things, the stronger the artist you become. And so I do this, and that helps me with my proprioception in the dark. I often use my own body as a guide. I use my shoulders and head and my waist and my knees, and there's some significant levels, much like you would see on the door jamb of a child, of the inches, and they keep growing. I kind of have that visualization in my head as I do this, as well as not only vertical, but I also put it on the XY plane. And so most of my light paintings are broken down into quadrants. And in the first quadrant, I'm painting over here, and what do I want to do down in this quadrant, and what do I want to do over here, and vice versa, what do I want to do over here? And these things all help light painters in general. We're actually facing the camera, and so you're painting backwards, and you have to understand that. And you have to, if you're going to write anything, and I do a lot of sacred text, I do some Arabic, I do some Sanskrit, and so you have to actually be able to write backwards, which takes a lot of time and some practice. It's not for everyone, but I find that I love the challenge. I seem to be some sort of weird challenge. I just seem to jump in straight to the deep end and try to figure it out. I love the fact that it makes me push my boundaries, and I always seem to land on my feet somehow. I fall a lot, and that's the other thing about light painting. It's a very humbling art form. If you're afraid to fail, this is not the art form for you. You have to have some tough skin. You have to understand that experiment and the growing process inside of yourself is definitely part of the process. And so when I'm on set, which is, I consider light painting a performance art. If you stand there with a flashlight and don't move it, that's not really a painting. There has to be some sort of movement to create a brush stroke. And so I consider this performance art. And in my last couple of years, I've been performing at festivals and in front of the city and some other bigger venues. And so you absolutely have to have a creative process. And typically I invoke this little bark. This is a wood called Palo Santo. It's native to southwestern United States, as well as Central and South America. This incense, if you will, it invokes good creative spirits. Most people are familiar with sage, and that actually clears the negative energy in a spiritual sense, but this actually invokes good energy. And of course, on my set, I only want to have good energy in there. If you guys are familiar with my work, I did a 52-week live on the social medias where I'm light painting a new technique, a new image every week. And I definitely had this at the beginning of every performance, if you will. It definitely invokes the sensories as far as the smell, and it just calms my nerves. It can be a bit daunting to perform in front of a live audience, and that also takes time to overcome, and that seems to be one of my biggest hurdles is to get over that. But I also sit down and I meditate on the set, where my subject would stand, where I would stand. I sit down and meditate for at least 10 minutes. I do have a daily meditation practice as well as my yoga, but on set, definitely some point before the performance would begin, I would meditate and I would visualize everything I need to do as far as what steps, not necessarily sequentially in what order, which I would also do, but literally what steps I would be with my feet. Because light painting is a full body experience. You're moving your hands, particularly because they're holding the torches, but you're also moving your body, and you need to be able to use body as that point of reference. And so you can't be reaching out to the side thinking this. Why wouldn't you do it right in front of you so you could still use you as the point of reference as your own body, since you're actually pointing or painting straight in front of you? And so I would do that, and I would actually set my tools in order. I often use 4 or 5 different tools in my art. I believe that adds some complexity and depth with different textures. I find that I want to create art. I made a decision that I wanted to create art that other people couldn't really replicate. I wanted to be original. I wanted to keep evolving. I wanted to keep growing. And with that, just exponentially grows with the more light tools or light sources you use inside of a painting. Now, with that being said, I don't have any art background. I've not taken one art class. I've never taken one photography class, which gives me sort of a distinct advantage because I have a clean slate to learn from. And I've always said that I am my greatest student and I'm always my greatest teacher. I always look back at my old work and learn from that. I do find inspiration from other light painters and other artists out there, but I find that for me to personally grow, I need to look at myself and look at my work and see what else I need to do. And so that's my process. Light painting is difficult. Anyone that tells you otherwise is not being honest with you. It's a challenge, and I really hope that this art form can keep growing. I definitely want to see it be recognized on an international stage, and I'll get to that a little bit later. But light painting has definitely deepened my love for humanity. It is deepened my love for my spiritualness. I paint only from a spiritual place. I believe every art piece is sacred. I do take it serious. There is some levity about it. There is some fun and magic. But I love that part of it, but there's also a very serious sacred space for me that I believe that every art piece does hold its own soul. And I try to teach this. I have fast forwarding, I actually do teach canvas painting quite a bit. I do a whole lot of workshops with light painting and canvas painting. And one thing that I try to stress, not only is that everyone is an artist, but that everyone can approach that they have made a beautiful thing, and it's perfectly imperfect. You know, you don't come out. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get to that. Sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. But you know, other people are like, well, what's the difference between going indoor and outdoor? You know, as far as indoor in a studio painting and outdoor in a magical setting, I love going outdoors. Like I said, as a kid, I always loved being outdoors. There's something magical about nature. Nature is my church. You can see Mount Hood in the background. This is Lake Trillium. And basically, when you're outside, you are surrendering to nature. I often go early because I just want to enjoy the space in particular. And I'm often waiting for nightfall. We can only light paint when it's at blue hour or later in the evening. And so I take my time to familiarize myself with the surroundings, to maybe visualize what colors I want to use that night. And here's some abstract art. This is also done over water. Water for me is especially spiritual because it has this extremely calming presence with me. I meditate. I guess I can drop into my meditative state deeper and quicker when I'm in water, and especially in warm water because it's a little bit more comfortable. I'm assuming there is some sort of physiological connection between being in the womb as well as being in a bathtub, and at least there is for me. And so for me to get back to that cosmic source before I took my first breath, the more I can do that, the better. Let's see here. So that's outdoor, you know, and you have elements to deal with. You have insects, you have wind, you have temperatures, you have other people. You know, you can't just tell people, I'm sorry, this is my lake and you can't be here. Or, you know, for instance, at Burning Man or somewhere I'm trying to create in a very active space, You have to be very polite and show them what you're doing. And for the most part, people are very agreeable, but you definitely have a lot of external factors in an outdoor setting that can provide quite magical landscape. And remember, I am approaching light painting as a painter first with no photography experience. I approach every light painting quite literally as a painting. Yes, it is a photograph, but the photography aspect of it, the technical aspect, is only about 10 or 15, maybe 20% of the entire composition. In fact, I don't even really think about any of that. I put my camera on manual, I focus on my focal length, and I am extremely more concerned about what tools and what color palette and what composition and what message, most importantly, do I want to evoke in the audience when they see my piece of work. More than, what's my f-stop and what's my focal length and what lens are you using and what camera do you have? I mean, all these basic questions you get from photographers is a clear indication that they're a photographer first, and they're not a painter in per se. And so in the studio, you have a lot more freedom to use models, because models are warm and you can care for them. And that's the number one thing. If you're on my set, I am taking care of everyone. The beautiful thing about also being indoors is that you often have a very dark space, which gives you a little bit extra time. Everyone always praises the sun, but let's not forget about Her Majesty's moonlight. The moon also, at different phases of the lunar phase, can offer some significant ambient light into your background. It can also be the forefront of your focal point of your art piece. And so we've always been in love with celestial things, and I'm no different. As much as I can include them, I try to. But the indoor studio offers a little bit of safety as far as from external forces, wind and temperatures. Like I said, you can play a little bit more music if you want. Sometimes people are like, well, what kind of music do you play when you light paint? If I'm with a model, I try not to, because there needs to be constant communication and dialogue between her or him and myself. I need to make sure that they're comfortable, and I am also giving direction on set. And so there are some advantages and disadvantages of working with a model, and some of the advantages that you get to collaborate. You get to make beautiful art with another human being, and you get to honestly give them the gift of this art form and show them that they are seen as this light being, as this spiritual presence with light wrapping around them. And I'm not. For me, that's the ultimate gift. And it's what's hooked me. It's my passion to gift this to as many people as possible. As you can see here, I used a few different light tools, and I tried to eliminate the dress. I tried to create some motion with light. You can create motion with light. You can create some very ethereal effects with different light sources. There's a little bit there, but going back to nature, this, for me, when you talk about light painting and spirituality, for me, it comes with the time interval. If I'm doing something for 2 seconds or less than 3 seconds, I have a hard time finding the spiritual aspect in that. It's like if I slow down my breath and I find tempo, and I can create something that takes maybe 20 minutes of painting in the dark, I find it much more spiritual for me, because I can actually find myself sort of transported into that photo. Like I'm making the photo, but I'm also living that photo, and I'm also birthing this photo into the world. And so the spiritual aspects for me comes from time, and I try to extend my light paintings as much as I can, so I can feel that spiritual connection with me and my art, and a much higher source that's working through me. I feel like Patrick said, I am just a vessel. Sometimes sometimes I'm constantly getting downloaded, but sometimes I'm not. I have no idea about what I'm going to paint. It just literally comes through me, and I try to depict that into the piece of art as much as I can. I do try to paint some ethereal things. This is a magical book. You've got some little creatures kind of floating up off the page. Most of these photos or images were done, created live during my 52-week live. I love painting nature. Here's a flower I painted. All of these are single exposures. Here is my partner doing some little bit of calligraphy. So you can see that there's some powerful images with the model that you can't necessarily obtain with an abstract. Now, I do love my abstracts. I feel like abstracts take a lot longer, which again, you can find a better flow state. You can find a connection to your spirit and to your inner voice a little bit longer. And so I typically like the longer light paintings per se. I also dabbled in some graffiti art. And this is I did a series on murals. I did this for about 3 months. It wasn't really accepted in the community. I'm not sure why, but this is actually where my crossroads of being a light painter and being a muralist light painter and then being a canvas painter, it all started to come together because I understood composition, I understood color palettes, and everything that I was learning on my canvas side, I was reapplying to my light side, and everything I learned on my light side, I was applying to my canvas side. And I just became a little bit more in depth of an artist and as a painter in general. But you can see that some of these, this is fine art. I'm not sure what like I said, I think my end goal, and I know I share the same love with Patrick, is that I really want to take light painting to the next level. I want it to be recognized on an international level somehow, and there are barriers to that. I would love to pull the group at the end of this as why that this is not happening. I think for me, there's a little bit of apprehension because people don't know what light painting is authentic and what is post-processed and what is added after the fact. And if you can create something in a computer, yes, it is still art. It is still art. And everything that we create is art. We are living pieces of art. We are walking pieces of art. But I think that it definitely doesn't get the recognition it deserves, because there is some ambiguity of, well, is this the original piece of art, or did you actually add to it after the fact? And the only way to do that is to actually go back to where Patrick started, was to go back to film. Do these light paintings on film. You have a negative, there is a little bit of dodge and burning, if you will, but there's also the original piece of art. And I think if light painting could go back in that direction, we might find a little bit better, well received in the international community. I don't know. I'll open that up later. Let's come back to that. Let's keep going. And so as a spiritual being, I only paint from a spiritual space. I teach the same thing in my canvas paintings. There's definitely a time where I am painting and I have some structure as far as what I want to do, but there'll be a lot of times where I literally, like Patrick said, surrender to a much higher source working through me. And this photo right here, I probably did this photo in maybe 3 minutes. And, the writing on the outside of the triangle, there is some meaning to it. I often am downloading crazy symbols and sacred texts from I'm not sure where, and I hope that somewhere down the line I can get together with a linguist and maybe decipher if there's some common thread in all of these. I have a lot of these images, but for instance, this one took me about an hour and 10 minutes. I did this live on Instagram, and again, do these symbols mean something in particular? Not necessarily, but this is also something that I did this straight through without stopping, and I was not thinking. This is the time where you stop thinking, you put your rational brain aside, and you start relying on your instincts. You start painting with intuition. You start believing in your intuition. And like Patrick said, some of my favorite images and paintings have come from this space, and I try to install this into my students, into all my workshops, that if you can stop thinking so much and start feeling and start trusting your intuition, you are having an open dialogue with your inner child. You're having that open dialogue with your inner creative self. And that is the spiritual seed that I really try to install in all my students, as well as work on with myself throughout all of my art. And so, you know, I think we've talked about most of it. Does technology expand our consciousness? I'm not sure. You know, this is a tough question. This is a challenging question. I think that, you know, technology in our arena has potentially hindered us. It's used as a crutch. It does give you immediate feedback, but it also allows you to manipulate the image. And I am, you know, one of the rare few that really believe that light paintings should come straight out of the camera and they should not be altered. That is your piece of art. You know, if you birth a baby into the world, you don't send them off to the plastic surgeon and be like, he needs to lower his cheekbones and she needs to, you know, this is a piece of art. This is you are perfectly imperfect and you are beautiful in exactly the way it's created. And that idea alone is a beautiful concept for people to wrap their head around. When we live in a world of comparison, we live in a world of visual, and we're always trying to, you know, be better instead of just being happy with what we have and who we are as people. So I don't know if technology has expanded our consciousness. It has certainly opened the doors and made it more accessible to people to understand consciousness. But consciousness comes from inside of us. It comes from inside of our heart center. It comes from our soul. And there's no technology inside of me. I don't need technology to feel spiritual. In fact, I try to run from technology. I try to sit in solitude with my thoughts and connect with nature and the cosmos as much as I can. And so, you know, I'm not sure it's going to expand our consciousness. I think we have everything we need is inside of us. We don't need technology. We just need to listen. We need to stop and find some stillness and open up our hearts and start feeling. And if there's some self-expression through creativity that comes from that, even better, even better. I mentioned that it's very therapeutic, and this is kind of what I've been touching on. You know, when you are expressing yourself, that is therapy. You know, this is not you going to a counselor or a mediator and talking. This is you expressing yourself through art. And this is a reflection. This is a reflection of your soul in that moment. I know Patrick has mentioned before in other talks, you know, when you do a light painting, this is the exact mirrored reflection of you in that moment. You know, I often tell my students, we could come back and we could convene in a month and we could do the same group dynamic, but we're all going to be in a different emotional state. We're all going to be having different outside influences, and our art will reflect that. Which is why I love light painting so much, is that it actually is a pure mirrored reflection of who you are in the moment, and what your soul is trying to express out into the world. And it's been a great journey for me. You know, I have done a lot of light paintings. I've traveled. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to be paid to travel around the world and share my magic with lots of amazing people. But now I feel like in the later years of my artistry, I'm now sharing this, and I'm sharing this approach of, you know, making art with intention. This is not just going out there and scribbling or doing some sort of, this is, you know, when I'm speaking of canvas paintings in particular, when you're making a piece of art with your own hands, this is the closest to technical source energy or God that you are creating something. It doesn't have to be a canvas painting. It could be carpentry work or dance or any sort of artistry, any sort of self-expression. You are expressing your inner soul. And I'm trying to touch as many people as I can. It's been really well received. It's a little bit different approach than other art teachers, maybe, because I think people are a little bit scared to touch into the spiritual realm. But you know, art and spirituality are the two pillars of my life. Together, they form who I am. They have transformed me beyond words. And I will try to share that as much as I can. You know, I try not to let enterprise and capitalism and commercialism affect my artistry. I often do art for free. I often gift this. This is part of my Burning Man culture, that we are decommodified and we are doing this out of the love and respect for the source energy that is given to us. Often I hear from other light painters, why do you keep doing the same kind of technique? Why do I see everything looks kind of the same or very similar? Where's your creative output? Where is your involvement? And basically the response is, I need to stay on brand. This is part of, this is what I'm selling. This is part of on brand. And as a natural creator who I'm not doing this for the income. It's sometimes kind of hard to hear, because I feel like they're confining themselves to that one bit. And in some ways, they're the consequences of making money or staying on brand is actually limiting them as an artist and as their self-expression. And so, I think that's about all I have. I really hope that we can find more art in our lives. I hope we can share more art in our lives. I really feel like it's therapeutic. I feel like people need to express themselves and they don't understand how. And just the pure joy of drawing something, or just doodling, or just letting your mind go, like stop the thinking and start feeling, and just living with your intuition, really starts to heal yourself. And then through healing ourselves, we can ultimately heal the world.
Aaron, thank you. That was really beautiful. We're 20:07, so we're gonna have to open the floor for questions from the audience, from the participants. Has anyone got any burning question for Aaron and Patrick? Or you want to comment on something that they said? Judith, go ahead.
Hello. Yes, I wrote down lots of things when Patrick was talking and stuck my hand up then, but then we went on to Aaron. I've got a few things for Aaron. So Aaron, that last piece that you showed with the grid, so I take it you stood in the dark with your little light thing behind it, and that's why they're also symmetrical and laid out beautifully.
Thank you. Yes, so this grid exists in one of our forest parks, and I was walking by on a nature hike, and I decided that often I try to integrate my art with the natural surroundings that is giving to me, and so yeah, so each one of those, you can't see them, but there's wires that do break down the grid, and I just went down.
Yeah, you can. I got it. Yeah. I thought, how did he do it? And might be interesting to know a little bit, if you could talk a little bit more about the light and integrating with your what's on canvas.
Can you explain further?
Well, no, you said you worked with light and you worked on canvas at the same time, and I didn't quite get how you were doing it.
Well, they're two separate mediums, and I have shot my painting as the background, and then
Yeah.
with the exposure still going, I actually do a light painting inside of that. So I'm actually creating the background with my own acrylic painting, and then I'm light painting inside of that. And so that's the way that they are literally integrated. But I think what I was referring to was the procedures or the learned processes of color palette, composition, shadowing,
Right.
all of that is interchangeable between any sort of painting. It doesn't matter if you're painting with light or if you're painting with watercolor or oil or acrylic.
Yeah.
You still have the similar, very similar concepts that should be applied across all painting.
Yes, and it might form part of the answer for why you were saying, well, why doesn't it go more public? I know Patrick doesn't mind because he's just going, I'm just doing it. I'm just following it. It'll take me wherever. But I was looking at his beautiful images and I thought, well, how do I see them? Not necessarily how do I possess them, but where are they? Do you know? I mean, do I have a light box and then they're on there, or do I have a, as you were saying, you were going to capture some of yours on film, Aaron? So, sorry, yeah, you were talking about you wanted to go back to film. So you're going to take a photograph of what you produce, and then that becomes the art object. I don't see what the thing is.
I think what Judith is asking is, how do you produce the final image? If you print it on paper, digitally, or if you could have a light box where you project your image. I guess same question for Patrick. Actually, it's.
So you, right? Yeah.
So it's an acrylic print.
This is a print on aluminum.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay.
Right.
Great. Yeah.
So you make a print of them somehow. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And working with technology, I mean, what came into my mind, and it was interesting, it used the word mirrored, was that where technology has helped me with the spiritual side was I had a teacher who taught biofeedback. This was many years ago, and I had trouble with meditating and I was all over the place. Not that I'm not now, but very much so then. And it at least gave me some idea of what you were trying to do, because you had an image of it. So I was wondering about whether you, well, I mean, I know you could, but you could do brain image light paintings, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you could sit in meditation and do those. Yes, please, sirs. Which brings me on to the next thing, which was I was more interested to hear both of you speak a bit more about your practice, your meditation practice. Perhaps Patrick more so than you, Aaron, because I think I was picking up Taoist sort of ideas from what Patrick was saying, and I'd be interested to hear what Pen's got to say, if he's still with us, if he's not gone to talk to his spiritual child. So, well, he said he was going to go. Oh, there he is. Well, I know, but it's God knows what time in the morning, isn't it, for him? So he was because some of the images that Patrick was producing struck me very much like Zen paintings, brush paintings.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, it's just like I said, there's been so much I don't know what my guides have cooked up for me in this lifetime, but it's been quite a journey. But I think every time I've got into something, at one point I had to let it go and get into something else. So at one point I did study all kinds of religion. At one point I was listening to a lot of Alan Watts and reading about all kinds of religion. I was exposed to a lot and did absorb a lot. I think the last group was the Sufi. I had incredible experiences with them in Turkey. And I guess, when I lived in New York and I was young, there was a place that sold noodles. And one of my favorite one was A Little Bit of Everything. And there was a soup called A Little Bit of Everything. I was like, oh my God, they have the soup for me. They have the soup, A Little Bit of Everything. So I took that soup all the time. And what I realized, and a lot of people say, oh, you practicing martial art, do light painting or this and that. And I guess everything was important. A little bit of everything was important, but I also had to make space for the culture of light painting that wasn't established in any way, except the technique and a few people who explored it, to let it happen through me. So I could not say, okay, I'm going to get so good at martial art that I'll use those techniques to make light painting, because then I would choose a club, I would choose a group, I would choose a culture. So it took me a while to understand that it's better for me to get influenced by all, but to not choose a group, to not be part of one culture, but to be part of all cultures, because I'm somehow intuitively I'm giving birth to light painting, to part of light painting, part of the culture of light painting. So I wanted to keep it pure. So yeah, there are influences from every religion. There are from many cultures, from Asia, Middle East, from Europe, from America, from everywhere, and from some music in Africa, so from all kinds of. So I let myself be moved by the waves of the ocean that we're all part of. And at the end of the day, okay, let's see what light painting has to say, because that's the school I'm at, that's the student I am, and that's what I'm here for.
So when you were talking about when you were doing one particular light painting, and you thought, sorry?
Sorry, Judith, do you mind if Sheila takes the word? She's been waiting very patiently.
Can I just ask this one thing? Sheila won't mind, I'm sure. Sorry, Sheila. You were talking about open and closed. That wasn't, and when you were talking about doing your lines, so you had a line and you had right hand and left hand, and then you had open and closed. Was that an open and closed line, or was it an open and closed aperture or something?
It was, I mean, the aperture, of course, it's there basically for the technique, but how do I make a line? And by opening the body. And that's why.
Oh, right, because I
start
was
again. I was like, oh, let's close the body.
Yeah.
And then do the other hand. Let's close the body. Let's open the body and discover, all the possibilities on this basic plane, and then get really good at it and really comfortable with it until things starts happening, and then evolve from there. But never just like, okay, I'm doing this, I'm doing random stuff. That's what I did first in my first school, and then I unprogrammed that school and then open up to a new school. So you open and you close. But that also represents something else that's important, is I realized I observed a lot of the cycles in my life, and a lot of circles are about compression, getting to a place of like, oh my God, it's so intense. And then all of a sudden there's a break, there's something that breaks in the energy. Everything starts falling apart. And then I let go at that moment. And all of a sudden there's the birth of all the projects that I've been building until this moment. And I realized in creation, the birth of a mother giving birth to a child is very, very similar to the process of what we're doing in projects. We don't have that physical child, but there's something else that is inside of us that we build over time. And it's not necessarily 9 months, it can be more or less. And at one point you just like can't take it anymore. And then everything starts falling apart and you're like, oh my gosh, should I quit? Everything's falling apart, what's going on? But this energy needs to break and you need to let it go. And then there's a real birth and something transformative starts happening beyond yourself. So
your
there's compression and expansion.
Working fabulously, Patrick, because that's the perfect segue for Sheila.
Right, thanks, Jude. Okay, so I'm a pre and perinatal psychology educator. What's going on with the psychology of the preborn, even ancestrally before they're conceived? You have been using so many natalistic terms, consciously, birth, compression. I have put in the chat a link to the Tufts University bioelectric frog face. And what I'm seeing is embryonic performance. The embryologist that I have studied with actually calls what we do performance, and it's telling us something. So I think, you know, you're in the dark, you're doing this bioelectric, you are the light inside, but you're using your wands and things to express that. So I can't tell you, this would be a fabulous pre and perinatal psychology therapy practice.
Wow, just wow. You bring new words, my vocabulary, and you bring a new idea to my reality. And I thank you for that, Sheila.
Welcome.
The next phase that we're entering right now, and I don't want to talk about it publicly, but it does have to do with healing, and in a very grandiose way. We're going beyond what everything we've established, what I established, and we're just using the knowledge and experience to bring tool and gather other brilliant professionals who are competent in other areas to go towards healing. So I'm very interested in the YouTube link that I just noted.
You're living the model of what Taoists call the immortal fetus, or what Rudolf Steiner called the spirit embryo. The work that you're doing is making you function at a higher level, which is what the egg and the sperm do when they come together. Goethe called it Steigerung. You're functioning at a higher level.
Wow, that is so aligned with everything that I've just experienced. Wow, yes, it's so aligned. It's so on it. Thank you. I'm stunned by what I just heard. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Ken, I think people wanted to hear your opinion of what they expressed in terms of spiritual, you know, their spiritual experience. I also heard quite a bit of Eastern spirituality when they talked. I was wondering if that resonated with you at all.
Me or Aaron or both? Sorry.
Well, most particularly you, Patrick, because you were talking about the void, and you were talking about you were using a language that sounded influenced by East like Buddhism, to say it. Aaron seems to, apart from the fact that you both meditate, therefore, you know, meditation is Eastern, whether it's Hinduist or Buddhist, but it's a practice that comes from the East. And one question I had for you was, what comes first? Is it meditation or is it art? Because I was trying to disentangle the two when you guys were talking, when you were talking about your evolution, your life. And I found it quite difficult. I think for Aaron, it's clearer that he started with meditation first, and then it transformed into an art practice, and now the two have merged. But with you, Patrick, I wasn't so sure, because you clearly went on a spiritual journey for what, 15 years? Yeah.
Yeah, traveling outside. Yeah, surviving, traveling, and
so what I'm, you know, one thing that this group is trying to figure out, really, not really, but one of the things we're trying to understand is, you know, whether art is spirituality, i.e. is a path to spirituality, or, you know, spirituality nurtures creativity and art, and therefore art is the, if you want, the outcome of a spiritual practice. Perhaps, you know, the two things cannot be separated. Perhaps.
I actually think it's both and. I don't think it's an either or. I think it's both and.
I mean, it's open to everyone, this question.
My sense, yeah.
I agree. For me, they're inseparable. You know, I paint from a spiritual place. I was meditating for a good decade before I found my creative expression through art. So there was one that, you know, but now that they are intertwined, it's almost like a breaded knot that's woven together. You can't pull them apart without breaking some of it on the other side. For me, they coexist. They will always coexist. I do think that spirituality nurtures art. And I definitely think that art is a spiritual practice when you're creating it. And so it's hard for me to just to separate them, to be honest with you. I think I think they coexist. I think they're intertwined. And you know, when you're creating a piece of art, you are acting in a spiritual nature. So just in that, I think it solves the question. But it is a very difficult question because it's not really a chicken or the egg. They you know, that it's not, you know. I think that, you know, we're people that were painting on the cave walls. Were they feeling a spiritual presence? I hope so, because I think that anytime you paint or create something or visualize something that you're feeling or want to express to someone else or to yourself, that's a spiritual feeling for me. And I hope that's like that for everyone. I don't know.
I mean, the answer is creation. Creation comes first. And right now you're creating an experience by accepting to be here with us, and you're creating your own experience. So you have a piece of the puzzle, or maybe something that'll come into you right now, and that's creation. You've created by being present here. You've created this. This is part of your path, and everything else, all the decisions you make, all the choices you make. Life is completely creation. It is completely interactive. So anybody that gives you a formula is giving you a push towards a direction. You can make your own experience, but after that, you leave the formula, because the formula is that person's formula. So if I give you an answer that is like, do 1 step, 2 step, 3 step, that's me, that's my experience. You're a different being. You have different needs, and you have different limitations and different possibilities that I don't have. So at one point, you have to just trust yourself, experiment, find the things that calls you, the things that attracts you, and you will get there. And that's why I mentioned the organic farmers, because I know a few really incredible organic farmers, and they are super grounded, super present, super loving, and they don't practice anything else. And the first time I tried some local organic farmers' food at a table, and one of the farmers, she was there, I ate her vegetables, and I turned to her and I was like, "You're changing consciousness through farming." And she looked at me, she says, "Yes." And I was like, "I thought it was just through art. Thank you." And then I realized we change consciousness, we evolve in consciousness through everything. To being a soldier in the army, to being the worst person in the world. Everything contains spirit. The spiritual, that what we call the spiritual, and we have to be smart about it, because the spiritual can also be a formula, a school, a business. It can be just like anything else, like yoga. You know, there's tons of studio yoga. Which teacher can teach you the essence of yoga? Well, that's a different story. So we use the spiritual as just trampoline, like we use light painting as a way to learn. And then we want to achieve spirit inside of us. We want to feel, we want to know, we want to relax, we want to understand that we are infinity. That, okay, we're holding on to life, we're scared of death. I get it. And suffering, oh my God, I've been through suffering a lot, and I still go through suffering. It's part of the show. It's part of the game. It's part of why we are here. And we'll do the best to learn as quickly as possible what we have to learn, so we can move on to the next lesson, to the next experience. And when you start repeating the same experiences again and again and again, that's where you have to say, wait, I'm just in patterns right now. I'm not being authentic. Let's change something. I want to learn. Let me explore a new door. Let me read different kind of books. Let me meet different kind of people and be challenged. So it's really you, the creator. It's co-creation. The real term is co-creation. It's really you, the driver. You're the captain of a boat on an ocean that you can't control. Take care of your boat and do your best.
Patrick, you were doing so well, because I put my hand up which Annalisa will see eventually, because I just wanted to say thank you for having the dark side, or whatever you're going to, you know, whatever you call it. You've got destruction as well as expansion. So you've got the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, because most people don't want to know about the dark. They just go, no, not for me. And it's all love and heart and all, you know. Sometimes I'm afraid I just find it too much. And it's such a delight to hear somebody that allows that other side in. So thank you.
Well, I think for us, for our group, it was very interesting to see how you bring together your creative practice and your spiritual practice, and how you know these two aspects come together, because this is the type of discussion that we were interested in, and felt, or I've been feeling, that it's missing in culture in general. I mean, it's there. I'm not saying it's not there, but it's rather rare to bring these two, the aesthetics and the spiritual together. And I thought that what you brought today was very 21st century type of spirituality. Because I was thinking, okay, what's the difference between your presentation today to Vasily Kandinsky at the beginning of the century? And there are some similarities, especially when you talked about how abstract, I think it was Patrick, you were saying how strong you felt about your abstract work. And I immediately thought, oh, why so interested in the abstract? And it brought, it reminded me of Kandinsky. But at the same time, the language that you have been using, both of you, is very 21st century type of spirituality. So I think it's interesting, to sort of see the difference between the artist of the past and what is wanting to evolve, what is happening or now, because we have a very different approach. Things have changed, and one of the and one of these changes are in both of you, like your insistence on embodiment, how important it is for you to embody the art. So you have the abstract, yes, as the final result, but you also have the visceral, physical aspect, which is very important to you. It's extremely important to you, and this is very 21st century spirituality, which brings together the mind, body, and spirit. So I think we're going to need some time to think about your presentation, because it was very rich, and I'm sure we can find many interesting insights. You were saying, for example, about technology, that you're not so sure about the role of technology, but you are using technology. I mean, a camera is a piece of technology, and it's actually a piece of modern technology. And it's very interesting. And I thought that, I don't know if it matters if you end up doing some work on digital sort of correction or whatever to your work. I don't think it actually makes a lot of difference at the end, because the actual work, the origin, the point of origin is the light painting, which is where you're coming from. So it's important, and this is and the first time I heard of light painting was, and now I remembered it. I mean, I suddenly remembered it. It was ages ago. I think when I was a child, I saw, it was a book about photography, and the last chapter, or the few images at the end, were something to do with light photography. And the interesting what I remember, that it was images of voodoo rituals or some kind of ecstatic something that somebody was taking images of. And so I think that in the popular imagination and also in our imagination in general, people feel that light photography is somehow related to spiritual practice. It's perhaps because of the darkness and the light, which is, it's the very beginning of everything. It's the Genesis. It's the book of. It's the creation. It's the darkness and the light. And this is why it's so important, because you're working with these two fundamental powers, of darkness and light. I mean, it's the universe. It's everything that there is. So and of course technology is very important. I was very interested in when Patrick was talking about when he started his journey with film, with actually developing film. I think it's a really interesting process, and I think Aaron, you mentioned that it would be interesting to return to it, or and I think that, and also I think that there is a trend these days of young people returning to work with film. You probably heard of it, to work with negatives, like with the old-fashioned kind of cameras. It's actually young people who are interested in doing it, and it's because I think at some point we're going to look back at our old cameras. I'm doing it so sometimes and look at, I really feel like sort of returning to these feelings of pre-digital, but there is magic in this darkness of the moment before you see the results. So, and the time that you have to wait until the image is developed. I think this is that's when something comes out of the darkness. You have this image. So I thought it was very interesting that you started your journey with working with this process of development and developing, because it's very much at the heart, I think, of light photography, and it's probably made you understand it just very well. It's like the roots that you came from are very, yeah. So I think it's actually good to start with the old negative or return to it, because camera and photography was, when it was invented, I mean, there was a lot of there's a lot of people who were very interested in the power of the camera to capture the invisible, to capture the spirits, to capture what is unseen. And they were talking about it in a sort of spiritualist circles. And it was wonderful to hear you now saying similar things, but in a different way, because you're still very interested in the invisible and in showing something that we can't see, but you're doing it in a new way. It's like, so I think there is a lineage. Thank you. There is a lineage here developing.
I just want to invite people.
Yes, okay, I finished.
No. It connects to what you're saying. If you watch the Gary Fabian Miller link that is on the event page, because he is one of the few remaining film photographers who did this lecture for Oxford University. And in this lecture, he's lamenting the end of film photography, because what's happening is that the papers and the chemicals, they're basically being stopped. Mm-hmm. He cannot source them anymore. And his printing studio has been shut. And this is happening all over the place. So I did my dissertation on Bill Armstrong. and Bill Armstrong is a color film photographer. Now, Fabian and Armstrong, Bill are very different because Gary works cameraless. So it's really interesting because he captures light on the photographic paper. So if you haven't seen his work, again, when you hear his talk, he is so spiritual. I don't know whether he's aware of that or not, but it is so clear that his practice in the darkroom has so many elements of spirituality. And so I just invite you to watch it, because I don't think that film will be the future, purely because the material isn't available anymore.
It may be also an environmental issue, because I mean, they were saying it's not really good for the environment, and digital is better for the environment. But perhaps, yeah. But I just want to say one thing about what you just said. You know, I think the beauty is that artists like Patrick and Aaron that came today were open enough to just say that they are interested in spirituality, that this is part of the practice, and this is what they do. And I think that we should be able to, at this day and age, you know, people should be brave enough and come and present themselves as they are. And you know, I understand what you're saying, because we kind of trying to find the spiritual in artists' work from the past, and maybe they didn't say what they really feel because it wasn't allowed, or because it still sounds a bit strange to some people, etc. But I think that I think that I would like to be in a world, okay, or I would like to see a culture where artists can come and present the work without fear and saying, okay, this is what we do. Because artists should think outside the box, and they should be revolutionary, and they shouldn't be afraid. And so, you see what I mean? I think it was wonderful to have this opportunity today. And I hope that we'll continue to work in this way. And I'm sure that we're going to discuss it further. I mean, Patrick and Aaron's, you know, your work. I mean, I'm sure we will.
Lilia, where do you live?
Why do you ask me?
Because I don't know anybody like that.
Like where? Like who?
Yeah. Like people who wouldn't say that they were interested in spirituality or claim that. And I didn't think it was a problem for artists in the past.
It is, well, it doesn't matter where I live. It's got nothing to do with I lived, you know, I've lived in London for God knows how many years, okay? That's not the point, but it's not in fashion, okay? And it's complicated to discuss the spiritual in relation to art, and I can give you many books and articles that support my this argument.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, I never read them. Sorry, I'm ill.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. But you probably live and work in environments where it's obvious that the spiritual exists, but the art world is very it's complex, and there are many arguments about the spiritual in art which are not in favor of this particular discussion, okay? So it's not because I live in a repressed society where it's not allowed to say or
Thank you, I understand now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
But I think that's, Aaron wanted to talk about the fact that light painting isn't considered a fine art, which, you know, I feel like him, because I've been through an entire BA, 3 years at Westminster University, and they have never shown any picture of light painting. Not only they didn't show it in the theory, they didn't even suggest it in the practice, which is crazy. It's so much fun, first of all. It's incredibly creative. And as Patrick said, it's a practice that really develops the right hemisphere.
Mm.
And it does so because of the union of the body and the mind. So they have to work in unison. And as photographers, we don't. The practice of photography takes you out of the reality that you're taking picture of. So it's very much, apart from photojournalism, where people, are in the middle of the events, most photographic practice is about taking yourself outside of that reality. And there is this whole idea that your objective, that photography is an objective means because the photographer is an observer and they are observing reality and taking a straight photograph from it. This practice is completely different because you, the photographer, as they said, you're the performer.
Yeah.
And you have to move your body together. It's very fascinating, this practice, because obviously your mind is planning your movements. So you pre-plan in your mind, or perhaps, as Patrick said, he reacts. So he doesn't think anymore. But I think it takes many years of practice to arrive to that level, because it's like dance. Professional dancers can dance without thinking. But I've been, studying dance for many, many years. I still have to think because I don't have enough practice to move without knowing what to do next. So there is this combination. It's like any art, music. You can improvise only once you have excelled in your practice. And at that point, the left hemisphere has stopped its function, so to speak, and the right hemisphere takes over. So going back to why isn't light photography or light painting considered a fine art? I suspect is what Leela was talking about before. It's people perceives it, even though maybe unconsciously, perhaps, that is a little too spiritual. I don't think they can rationalize it, but it's something that maybe we, as a group, we could brainstorm. And but Patrick, I think, has broken that barrier. I think you are considered a fine art photographer, right, Patrick?
I kind of quit the art thing because I realized there was a wall, and in that conversation I had with a guy in New York, he said, "Yeah, but is it art?" I'm like,
well, why not?
I was like, "What? Of course it's art! Blah, blah, blah. I've been doing this for 30 years. I know this is definitely art." And I was like, "Okay." That's a question a lot of people have because it's new. The art world is often very, very conservative, and they have interests. They have a business running. They have certain things that needs to work a certain way. I think the art world was my next target after the commercial, and I built this website, Light of Rochon. I reached this incredible place. I was super satisfied, super excited, and I did reach out to 500 people in the art world, but nobody responded. And I also reached to incredible people I admire in life, like Wade Davis, Alex Gray, the guy who did Octopus, My Teacher. I reached all these incredible people who were not in the art world, and some who wrote incredible scientific, spiritual books. All of them responded to me. All of them said, "Wow, nice manifesto. Oh, wow, this is great." Okay. Or at least their assistant said something. "Okay, we'll watch it." And I was like, wow, the people I love respond, and everybody else really doesn't care. And I reach out to great artists and galleries and museums and this and that, and I realized, okay, it's just a game. It's another business. That's all it is. I don't need, and that was my mission, to get it validated, to get light painting validated by the art world. And then I was like, let's get over that. They cannot slow me down. I have things to do here. I don't need their validation to exist and make what I do. They're not my boss, they're not my master, and they have no power over me and my path. My path is guided by my spirit, by my heart.
Mhm.
And that's all there is to it. So where am I naturally flowing? Eventually they'll catch up. That's what I believe. I think they're slow. I don't think they're the innovators. I don't think they're the ones opening the door and supporting the new. Sometimes there are exceptions. There are exceptional museums that does incredible things. But it's like, you know what? There's other things. And I think the world needs right now is healing. I think the world needs some serious, serious, serious healing, more than a beautiful exhibition in the museum. The world needs healing. So I realize I've been on the healing path for 30 years as I was doing my light painting. And I realized I have a huge background in the self-healing. I was like, okay, now's the time to put it all together and create new kinds of experiences. So it's good. I'm glad the door of the fine art and the galleries and all of that didn't open. I'm so glad that I'm not stuck there. And I've talked to some photographers who on that tour and they said, oh my God, it's so hard, it's so crude, it's so this. Plus, they have to create this aura, this mystery around you, this story that's not totally authentic. And you have to behave a certain way and not be so approachable. And this, oh my God, it's like a game. It's like the fashion industry is often like that. There's a lot of different industries, cinema industry. There's all these industry that plays so many games. I don't want to play games. You know, I've done the professional things. Great. It's time to move on. This is calling. I'm going with the flow. So it's not necessary that a museum or a gallery gives me validation. And every time I know artists in that world, I'm not impressed, not by the art, by the whole system and how they have to sell, make their money and do this and do that. I'm not impressed. There's some great artists out there, and that's just one way to do things, and there are other ways. I think there's something really powerful behind light painting that hasn't been mentioned, and it's the light emitting body. We're at a place where we can talk about these things, and Leela was right in the way that I remember there were times where there's so many subject about spirituality and about consciousness that you're not allowed to talk. Like 10 years ago, there are certain things you can say. Now there are all these big influencers talking boldly about all their stuff. They have millions of followers. They are super powerful, and they're opening the doors finally. And now we're allowed to talk about these things. There's a medium who wrote a book, The Light Between Us, and she's like a top medium. She didn't want to write a book. She got a message to do so. And now she helped all these other mediums come out of the closet and be, okay, it's starting to be safe. We can come out in a bigger realm now. And there's tons of people who've done ayahuasca, all kinds of psychedelics, who now can come to the open and say, okay, this is what it's been teaching. There's stuff on Netflix about, you know, how to change your mind. There's stuff about spirituality. There's stuff about life after death. There's a TV show about a young guy. He's a medium. He's gay. He's young, and he's a medium, and he's got a great show on Netflix. And it's like, okay, wow, okay, the world is opening up, and Netflix
That's it,
did
the
a
world
great
is
job
opening up.
at opening stuff up. So there are subjects that were taboos. I remember when I started talking energy in the 90s, and it was like, energy, whoa, that's a word we don't use. Consciousness, ooh. Now it's like, yeah, bad energy. Oh, good energy. Oh, yeah, I'm feeling the energy right now. Wow. It's a word. Amongst other words, we use it. So I think there's demystifying stuff that's happening. We're opening up. Things are getting more popular. People in Silicon Valley are microdosing. And it's like, oh, wow, the world is really opening up to stuff that we were not allowed to talk. So we're here for so many reasons. And sometimes we think, okay, I should go in fine art. And it's like, no, I'm going in healing. Oh, okay. And I hope to make a big difference in healing and creating tools for people to heal themselves and really like get to other levels fast. Not 30 years of meditation on the mountain. That's the old model. That we can do things fast. We have biofeedback machines now. People can learn. Dr. Joe Dispenza started that wave, and others are following, and all these people are creating tools that we can get biofeedback and enhance our meditation so fast. Because, oh, here I'm in alpha wave. Oh, here I'm in beta wave. Oh, here. So the time is super exciting. It feels like the world is falling apart in one way, and another way, it's really opening up, and maybe the world is birthing right now.
Yeah, it's true. This is what I meant, that it's the spirit of the time. It's the zeitgeist, it's really, that's what's happening. Yeah, Sheila.
Yeah, Sean Kelly wrote a book called Becoming Gaia on the Threshold of Planetary Initiation. And in that book, he's on YouTube too, through the Science and Medical Network, YouTube, Sean Kelly. He talks about Stanislav Grof's 4 perinatal matrices. And he is saying that that's what we're doing now as a culture. And that's what makes people uncomfortable, because it's reminding them of perhaps their own birth struggles. So maybe the work that you're doing with your light work, because it is so natalistic, like it may be triggering things that are in people's stories, but on a somatic level, and they don't even realize it's in there. So they're holding it at a distance because it's just way too out there or in there for them.
Healing can be very, 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 very powerful and very scary, because it means change. It means becoming a new person that thinks differently and behaves differently.
And the right brain is what is dominant in embryonic performance. The brain takes things in globally, and that prenate is feeling through its body. So that's what you guys are doing. That's what you guys are doing, as far as I can see.
So bringing the conversation down to earth. I mean, if I put my business hat on, all we have to do is create a market for it, right? That's the beauty of capitalism. You can always create a market for something. We know there is demand, we know there is offer. That's all it needs to happen, and then people will notice. So I agree with Patrick about not bothering with what we may think is the orthodox art world, because I agree, it's very it's controlled by a few galleries and a few gatekeepers, so it's very difficult to break into it, and maybe that's not the way to go. Maybe there should be other channels.
Yeah.
And sorry, just one last thing. I think Patrick was looking at NFTs, and non-transferable tokens, whatever that is.
Non-fungible tokens. Yeah, I've been exploring the blockchain for a while, and its technology, and it's very interesting. It's still young. It's still learning a lot. It's still just at the beginning, but yeah, they're been diving into it. It's just a tool. Technology is just a tool. Camera, light, all of it is just a tool. Technology confirmed in Japan through a very sensitive chip. And also in Germany, there's a machine that's super precise that can calculate the amount of photons quite precisely that comes out of the body. So we have technologies now that are confirming that we are light-emitting bodies. We're light-emitting people. Yeah, but there's literally photons coming out of us. But what's making the photon, right? What does it look like? What does it do? What does it transfer between us? And it's like, these are the questions that I ask myself as a light painter, because I've known about the light emitting body for a very long time. And I know light painting is just basically a primitive way with big flashlights and big cameras to do what nature's already doing. We're just like doing what we've always been doing for so long. We're emitting light and we're leaving a trace of light behind us. So we've been light painting this whole time. The whole world's been light painting. The planet, the suns are creating light in the universe, and they're making traces. And when we look at the stars, we see traces of light, and 80% of all the knowledge we have about the universe comes from those traces of light. So, and that light is long, like some of those stars don't exist. It's just that trail of light that's reaching us finally. So we're light emitting people. We have the science that says we're light emitting people. We have no idea why, what's producing it, what does it look like, what does it do? So I want to shake things up and say, hey, let's create those devices that allows us to see the interaction of light between people and see what it transmits, because we know through fiber optics and all these other technology, we can use light to transmit information. So what kind of information are we transmitting between each other? And some people say that we're transmitting a lot of information, we're just without talking, and we're actually transmitting more information through the exchange of presence than through the exchange of words. The words are feeding this, but there's a whole system that's actually communicating. And then say, oh, they got bad vibes. Oh, they got good vibes. Oh, I'm feeling the room right now. It's nice. Oh, this party's not happening. I'm feeling it. You know, these feelings of like, oh, somebody was looking at me. Oh, I just noticed, and I turned around.
Yeah.
How is this happening? I think it could be possible that the light emitting body is fast enough to bring all that data together and make us super, creating these super information highway. And I think if we feel someone or think about someone around the world, that you can connect somehow. And they've been doing so many scientific experiments about two things existing at the same place at the same time, and things being linked together, particles being linked together through a huge amount of space, and this and that. There's so many things. When I was in the car coming back from camping with my lady, I was thinking about the Queen one day. When is the Queen going to die? And my lady just like, she's on the phone and she says, the Queen died yesterday. I didn't say a thing. I just had the death and the Queen in my mind. And she was actually reading quietly that the Queen was dead. And somehow it got transmitted to me. It's like, Queen, it's like, she's been alive for so long. I said, what's going to happen when she's dead? When is she going to die? I was just thinking about her. I don't know why. But how did that information go from her consciousness to my consciousness? It might be the light emitting body.
That's very interesting. So is there this is fascinating about this. So are you working? Did you say that there are some scientists working on photons? And
well, that's been around for a long time already. Japanese have a very sensitive chip. It might be even more sensitive nowadays if they kept the research. When I'm talking over 10 years, they had that. And the Germans have a machine that calculates how many photons comes out of your body.
Okay.
So yeah, the technology is a tool. Like anything is a tool. It just depends what you do.
Yeah, but it's still very exactly.
We should definitely bring the scientific, the more cutting edge scientists together with the visionaries and everybody that can be useful, and ask the big question: where does it come from? What does it look like? And what does it do?
And
And I think those will be the keys to evolving consciousness and relationship.
Yeah, because
Celestine Prophecy talked about it a long time ago in their books. If you can see that world, then a lot of nonsense will be eliminated from our societies.
What you're actually saying there, Patrick, around that is sort of, it's zoning in on the science, Einstein and the theory of relativity, and Hapsburg, and the fact that there's nothing solid. Even a table isn't solid. It's actually waveform, it's light waves, and that we ourselves, in terms of creation, we are stardust. So that, it's picking up all of that. So all of us are only, okay, we look solid, but we actually are light waves. And I think that's what you're tapping into there.
I think so. Thank you so much.
It's also tapping into consciousness. What is consciousness? Because it could be to do with the photons, with the transmission of light. Well, it was suggested that this is something that should be explored in relation to art and science. So yes,
there's an incredible scientist who's opening huge doors. I mean, there's been a lot of really lit up scientists who just went into the quantum world going like, they brought us, you know, like a while ago, they brought us What the Bleep Do We Know? And that was fascinating. But there's a scientist that I love, that's incredible. He's just, you could ask him the most complex question and he's so intuitive, and his equations are the most precise we've had so far in many fields. And he explains how, you know, how consciousness works. He explains that we'll never create AI with zeros and ones of computers, that's not possible. But he explains how we can put consciousness into another being, but not with zeros and ones the way we're doing it. The AI we have now will never evolve to like this crazy, incredible place. It's always going to be limited by the system and the technology, because just binaural, and it's not enough to get to a real place of consciousness. It'll be artificial. So Nassim Haramein is
Yeah, I
Italian.
know. Yeah, I suspected you meant him. Yeah.
He's just like so lit up. His TED
Yeah.
Talk and Mind Valley Talk. Incredible. I'm like, okay, I love this guy, so on it. And he just comes up with the answers to just any questions we have right now about the universe, how it works. And basically the universe, the way it works for consciousness is just feedback. As soon as we're talking, doing things, living, we're uploading a form of data, an experience in the universe, and the universe is distributing everywhere that. And that's how consciousness is, just feedback. It's just constantly feeding everything that's been lived by everyone. All the experiences are redistributed in the collective consciousness. And it's just a big feedback machine, and that's how it evolves. I was like, okay, it makes sense.
We are way beyond the 2 hours. Like, thank God I booked 2 hours. But that's just the proof that these sessions actually need a lot more than 90 minutes. And it I don't know, it's something that Lila, June, and I will have to talk about in going forward, because it seems to me that the important conversation happens much later through, you know, it's a little bit of a journey. People have to start processing the information, come on board, understand what we're talking about. So I have to go.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Aaron and Patrick. It was really one of the most productive it's not a webinar, but it's one of the most productive conversations we had. We had great people participating to it. It wasn't many of us, but I think it's a conversation to be continued. So we aim to have this every couple of months. It will be other artists, other forms of spirituality and art. So we hope to see you back. Maybe you'll join our little group. And I think we have to end, Lila.
Yeah. Yes, of course. But thank you so much. It was wonderful, truly wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
And I like
Thank
your
you.
art, and I'm going to buy it.
Okay. Ciao. See you soon.
Okay,
Nice to meet
thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. That was very
Very
rich.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
join the group. Bye.